Again, thank you so much for the intro. And I was just following Gopal Krishnan's talk, and I realized that mine is a stark difference of the way he put facts about today and how things have grown. Mine's a lot more futuristic, but yeah. Before we get started on the brain's neural network as a service, right? Let me take some time to actually tell you how does the neural network of the brain work. So what you see in the image there, on the left side, of course, very obvious. It's the image of a brain. And what you see in the circle over there on the right side is the zoomed in image of a neuron inside a brain. And like Nidhi mentioned, we have close to 100 billion, 86 billion neurons in our head. And why are these neurons important? Is because every thought and action that you have, that you do, that you feel is because of a neuron. Uh, Nidhi, I'm having some trouble with the axis. Sorry, just give me a second.
Sure, sure.
I'm losing control of the PPT. Anyways, okay, coming back. Every thought action is because of a neuron, which means every time you've gotten frustrated with your manager, or every time you've been happy because your code worked without any bugs, and everything is actually because a neuron somewhere has fired in the brain. Now, it's not just one neuron, right? We actually have about 100 billion neurons in our head. And it's not one neuron is not responsible for a certain emotion. The way they work between them is neurons trigger some other neurons, which then trigger some other neurons, and in connection, all of them together is what forms part of the action that you have. And the next thing that you'd want to know is basically synapses. Now, synapses are gaps, actually gaps between two neurons, and why this is important. Why I have put it in the bracket is because synapses are what forms the connections between neurons. And the neurons fire electrical signals which go through synapses, forming a connection. And these electrical signals are actually called as neurotransmitters. Now, all of this is a lot about brain stuff that I've been explaining. But I'm pretty sure you folks have heard about neurotransmitters, right? You folks have heard, these are the general terms that we have heard. We have heard of dopamine, serotonin, and all of this we have heard that this makes you happy, and look into your dog's eyes, and that'll make you happy. Go for a run, and that'll make you happy. These are actually neurotransmitters, which are being sent from one neuron to another neuron through synapses. And that's what makes you feel the way you feel. Now, some stats about the brain is each neuron can transmit about 1,000 nerve impulses per second. And it's not just one neuron talking to another neuron. Each neuron can make tens of thousands of connections with other neurons. So this actually would give you a brief idea of what Nidhi was explaining when we started, is how complex the neural network is in our brain. It's not just about one neuron talking to another neuron. Now we're talking about 100 billion neurons talking to with tens of thousands of connections with the other neurons and through different frequencies called as neurotransmitters. Now, this is an on-paper 2D view, right? Let me take you through a 3D visualization. What you're seeing here is basically something called, it's from a YouTube video. And what you're seeing here, what you just saw is basically a glass brain technology. And just about now, you will see the magic start. The sparks that you see in this image are basically neurons firing. The curved lines that you see are the connections that are formed from one neuron to another neuron. You see there are some straight lines, you see there are some curves. This is basically how each neuron talks to another neuron via synapses. And you will see a lot of parts in the brain also glowing. Like you'll see blues and greens and violets, and in some cases yellows as well. Now, each neurotransmitter works on different frequencies. Dopamine, serotonin, all of them work on different frequencies. So this image that you see is actually a real simulation of a person's thoughts and minds being transformed into visual effects, just for you to see as to how his brain is firing during a certain activity that he was performing. Now, this, of course, is only simulated. I mean, this visual is only over controlled by a joystick. So that's where you see you're able to move in, and you can see the right side of the brain actually glowing up in green. And each part of the brain is actually controlling different parts of your body and action. Now, this is great when it was done via, I'm sorry, I'm having a problem with PPT. Okay. Now we have seen what happened in UC San Diego in a team over there. Let's move a little closer to home ground, shall we? About a year ago, I went bungee jumping. I took the risk of jumping off 88 feet of a bridge with only a rope tied to my ankle. It was always in my to-do list, so I always wanted to do it, and I went and I got it done. I didn't rush. I was super happy. Yet when I came and showed that video to my family and friends, people called me crazy. And they said, oh my God, why would you do something like this? There were people who refused to see the video as well because they were like, just watching you do it is it's giving me the jitters and I'm scared of seeing this. But yet, every time I saw the video, it took me through that sense of accomplishment and reward and that adrenaline back again. So let me take you through this video, and why don't you see as to how is your body and your mind reacting? All right, so that's me walking like a penguin because my legs were tight, and here's the person behind me giving me a pep talk, and I'm looking at the mountains in front of me, and all ready and absolutely fine, and just about there, I should be going off. Right? And just when I come up, you will see the sense of accomplishment in my face. You'll see me being super happy and super screaming. Of course, this doesn't have the audio. And then I'll be rotating like a satellite all around because I never knew what happened there. Yet when I showed this video to a lot of people, right, they said, oh my God, I cannot even watch this. This is super scary. I cannot do this. So that got me thinking as to what is it that in my brain or my experience or my personality that makes me want to do things that's giving me a slightly different feeling as opposed to what someone else when they're seeing the same thing. So let me split this into different things. Right? Let me split this into what actually happened. The first thing was just before I actually started walking, I was planning. Basically, I usually wear glasses, and so I put my glasses in my bag. I'm planning to see what happens if my glasses break because of gravity, and what would I do? I have an alternate thing. How do I walk? How do I jump? Do I do a Tom Cruise style and just go all in? So that planning part is actually handled by the prefrontal cortex in the brain. It's a part of the brain. And then comes actually when I was going to the place and of course walking. Now, walking is a general thing that we all know how to do. Kind of today, we say it comes naturally to us. This part is handled by the rostral prefrontal cortex, which is a part in the prefrontal cortex in the brain. And then, of course, imagination. As I stood there and looked at the mountains in front of me, I was like, I'm going to be as graceful and elegant as possible. I'm going to jump off with such elegance that people are going to be surprised. I'm not going to scream and I'm going to be like all princess and queen. So there's my imagination working, and that happens in the occipital cortex, which is at the back of the brain. And it is imagination because what actually happened was exactly the opposite. I screamed like I had never before in my life. And then just at that point, when there was a point of no return, when I knew I couldn't come back, he couldn't pull me back, and I'm just going to go down, is where my fear shot up to the maximum. That's where another part of the brain called amygdala fires up. It's responsible for emotion, and it also sends you a fear signal saying, oh my God, something is off. And then, of course, a few milliseconds later, I realized when the rope pulled me up, I realized that I was safe. The rope's actually holding me. And then I'm like, I've got my satisfaction reward sorted. So that's where my prefrontal cortex came into the picture. Now, why am I taking you through multiple different parts of the brain is because at the stage of planning, fear, imagination, satisfaction, it's basically neurons in these respective places that are actually originally firing up, and then they trigger a neural network system. So here's my proposal, right? I'm going to figure out what neurons have been firing in my head. I'm going to have that stored. I'm going to have it recorded. And then I'm going to fire the same neurons in your head without you having to take the risk of jumping off 88 feet off a bridge with only a rope tied around my ankle. So basically, you get to experience the advantage of my offering without having to undergo the cost and the classic definition of the service. Hello, everyone, and welcome to my talk, Brain's Neural Network as a Service. Now, as Nidhi suggested, this is actually an entirely futuristic proposal. It is a thing, we are thinking the future, but the way technology has been growing in the last few years, decades, this is not too far. And as we go ahead, let me show you how. But my proposal is very straightforward, right? It's very simple. And I'm going to start with the first thing is basically the download process. The download process is where I'm going to I'm going to take out the data of what neurons in my head or anyone else's head, basically a person of interest, P1, what neurons in their head is firing up. I'm going to take that, and that's the whole download process. And like I mentioned, a thought is formed by a lot of neurons firing together. So the first thing that we do is we figure out what is the duration that you're interested in. In the concept of the bungee jumping that I showed you, you're probably interested in, I'd say, 20 minutes before I actually jump to maybe 5 minutes after, from the fear, anxiety, planning, and then of course, the reward, right? So you figure out what duration you want from T1 to T2. And then at sampled intervals between T1 and T2, you take snapshots of the neuron that's fired. Now, when I say snapshots, these are not camera shots. These are basically taking a record of what neurons, which part of the brain, is it the prefrontal cortex, the amygdala, the occipital lobe, or the tens of zones that are there in the brain, right? Which neurons in which area is being fired up. You basically take snapshots of them at sample intervals. And you have, obviously, because you're taking them at sample intervals from T1 to T2, you will have a collection of these across time. And for ease of conversation, let's name this as nonceable. The next thing that you actually do is the store in the process. So now you've got downloaded. So now at this point, you have figured out for the 30 minutes, what's the state of my brain, what has been the state of my brain. And you obviously move on to the storing process. Very straightforward. You save the ensemble at a persistent storage. Because we're talking about a service, we're talking about data retrieval, anyone should be able to use it. We are offering it as a model. And then, of course, you have process, where you basically run processing techniques to identify key points of focus. Now, the key points of focus, right? Let me explain this in a couple of slides later. And then comes the third and the most important part, right? Where we are basically uploading or simulating. This is the part of where you start experiencing the entire service. With the data from the ensemble, they're going to artificially trigger your neurons at the same frequency. Now, when we spoke about frequency, I also mentioned about neurotransmitters, dopamine, serotonin, all of the other neurotransmitters that we have, to basically make you feel the exact same thing without having to take the passing pill. Now, this is like a simple form of the entire process. Now, you're probably thinking that, this is great. I mean, on paper, it's great. Of course, anyone could have it, right? How are you even thinking of such a proposal? So this is not exactly formed from midair. So the next couple of slides, I will take you through an experiment that was done in Harvard by a professor in Harvard called as Adam Cohen. So he and his team, they do a lot of research around this entire area about how do they look at neurons and all of that, and how do they process the neurons and everything that's coming. So this is an experiment, and this is from a TED Talk. I'd be happy to share the link with you folks. I recommend you watch it. It's really good. So this is from a TED Talk where Adam Cohen showed that you can actually visually show when a neuron is being fired up. Because up until now in our discussion now, when I was sharing with you, I only mentioned that what neuron sends out are electrical impulses, right? They're electrical. You can probably see them as much as you can see them in wires. But the whole point of gathering information as to which neuron is firing, one way is to do it visually. So based on, and what you see on the left side is an enzyme, so I don't want to go into details of that, but he has done a great job at explaining. So what you see here is at 1,000 frames a second of a rat neuron, which visually shows you when its neurons are firing up. So you can actually see that when a neuron fires up, you don't exactly have light bulbs glow in your head when you're thinking or doing something. But this is when you're actually infected with a virus, which can convert electricity into light. So this is how, this is the first part of it, right? This is the download part of it. This is where we get the information that ABC are the neurons that are being fired at a certain process. And let's move to the next part, the upload part. Now, download is probably easier one, right? You get the information, it's fine. But the probably debatable thing is you can't make me do what I don't want to do. I'm pretty sure we have all told this line sometime in our life to someone, but turns out we can. And again, in an experiment, Adam Cohen's experiment, let me show this to you. You may not be able to see it exactly accurately, but you see a white color pipe kind of a thing over the rat's head. That's actually an optical fiber connected to the rat's brain. And up until now, like just before I'm going to play the video, up until now, the rat's busy doing what it's doing, just regularly probably watching Netflix or anything. But then you'll see a blue spot go, and you'll see the rat going around in circles. And why does this happen is the optical fiber is connected to the motor cortex of the brain, basically which controls your movement. So when the light goes off, it triggers a neuron, the specific neuron, telling the rat that, hey, it's now time for you to go in circles against the rat's own will, possibly. So when I was reading about this, I realized, of course, it's only a matter of time before what we're doing in rat actually comes over to humans, right? That's how all amazing experiments start. But having said that, the next thing, and as a part of Converge, the whole thing is I have now set the premise of what a neural network of the brain is. What exactly happens? Can we even do it? But the next thing that I want to take you through is what exactly am I offering to you as a service when I'm talking about the brain neural network? So there are two things that we'll be offering, basically two different kinds of service offering. The first one is basically service offering of people. Now, don't get me wrong, I am not talking about people. I'm not talking about in that sense, but basically what I'm talking about is service offering of people's mindset. The whole point is to make you feel as close to the way I feel, or make you feel, yeah. So, and how do we do this is, let's start with the download process, right? So I'm going to identify a person one, T1, T2. And for ease of understanding, let's take it that I'm the person one. And what we do is the whole intention is to basically see. And the same process again, we arrive at a duration T1 and T2. And the idea is to get what neurons in my head have fired from T1 to T2. And as we discussed before, we identify what is fired, which neurons are fired. As you may recall from that glass brain feature that I showed you, it's not always a single neuron. I mean, actually, it's never a single neuron firing. It's a connection, right? It's a whole series of connections and whole sectors of the brain firing up. So in the service offering of people, we don't only take what is fired, we also take what is triggered. So what neuron has triggered what next neuron, and then what is the next neuron, and then so on. So not just the primary neuron, we also figure out what is the whole chain of neurons. In addition to that, we also capture the neurotransmitters that are sent. And I'll tell you why this is important as we go a little ahead. So here's what we do. We capture all the neurons that have been triggered in what sequence and in what strength. And like I mentioned, each snapshot has billion neurons, which in turn have 10,000 connections, thereby making this a dense neural network. Now, for people in this call who are familiar with the neural networks, dense neural networks, we're talking about layers. I'm going into that angle. So each of them becomes certain layers in a neural network. Let's call the massive collection of this flow as the ensemble. Again, ease of understanding. Now we've got the entire download information. You have figured out what's T1, T2, you know what neurons in your brain are firing up, and then is the upload process. Now, this is the interesting part. We have a person two, of course, the person who wants to know what exactly has been happening. For this conversation, I'll probably take Romal. Romal, please don't hold me against it. I'm just taking your name because people are seeing me. So let's say Romal wants to know what I have been experiencing. So first thing first, we take a backup of Romal's brain, including his structure, because of course we don't want to restore it after he's experienced what I've gone through. Or we put the brain into a no auto trigger state, which means Romal's brain also has these connections where it says neuron ABC should trigger neuron XYZ at a certain point of time. We stop the auto trigger. We only have first trigger. And why that's important is because I upload the ensemble which we got from my brain, including the chain of connections, the strength, and the primary neurons onto Roman's head for him to think and feel the closest to as me. So now at this point of time, Romo knows exactly what I've been thinking, what I've been feeling, and how I've been behaving. Now, why I say closest or not exact, I will discuss a little later, right? Now, this is service offering of people, one service. And I'm not going to go into details of the applications. We'll take that a little later. But the next kind of service offering that we have is far more, I'd say, easier, easy for us to understand, because I'm pretty sure we have all done that sometime in our life. Basically, a service offering of experiences. For example, I'll come to you and tell you that, hey, I did bungee jumping from the tallest place, or I went scuba diving, or skydiving, or I had this awesome sushi or uh, papu rice, for people who are foodies or anything, holding hands, watching a seminar, absolutely anything. At this point of time, we are talking about service offering of selling experiences. This basically means you don't have to move out from your couch. You just need to put on the device I'm going to give you. And based on what data I have on Zoom, you are going to be feeling exactly or close to the same thing that experience gives in people. Now, if you notice, I said people and not person, and I'll tell you why. So let's start with the download process first, all right? Now, for each experience to be felt, unless I want, again, Roman taking your name, unless I want Roman to feel exactly the same way how I'm feeling, he's probably more interested in knowing how the experience feels like. So as we discussed before, every neuron is a part of is because of my personality. My neurons are triggered in a certain way because of my personality, etc. etc. So I don't just give Roman what has happened in my brain. What I do as a download process is I identify N people who have gone through the same experience and with similar personalities. Makes a difference. Similar personalities to Roman. So that makes a difference. Once I have these N people, that's basically person one, T1, T2. T1, T2 is the same, right? Because you're talking about the experience. And as before, and as every flow goes, while I is less than n, we take a snapshot of only the originally fired neurons, not the chain, not the neurotransmitter, only the original fired neurons. And we have the collection of all these snapshots of all the people, and let's call it the ensemble of the ensemble. The next thing that we do is basically, here's where we do the process. Now the process is slightly different because now I have n different ensembles, n cross whatever snapshots we have, that many snapshots of how people feel. So in the process, what I actually do is I run processing techniques to arrive with decent accuracy that what are the neurons which fire in a human brain when a certain experience is felt. You're probably eating sushi, or you're going for a run, or you're playing with your dog, anything like that. So at this point of time, after the process, what's there is I no longer have Divya's brain exclusive information. I have an experience exclusive information that this experience causes these neurons to fire on an average. And then comes the fancy part where Roman's going to be happy. We are going to have the simulator we upload where we are going to go into the similar brain structure. So the person who's interested and trigger the exact same neurons. Now the difference here is when I trigger the exact same neurons that we're talking about at a specific time, it actually will follow the chain that Roman's personality, experience, past, everything has, his brain structure. So the experience is overlaid with his personality, which actually makes him experience the activity in his own style, the way he would experience if he were to do the same thing. Again, Roman, my apologies for taking your name so long. I hope it's okay. Cool. So yeah, sorry, were you saying something, Roman?
I think absolutely. Go ahead.
Cool. All right. So now there's my service offering, right? Service offering of people, service offering of experience. And you're probably like, yeah, you know what? This is great. I mean, you've showed us what rats can do, run around in boxes with blue lights on their head. You've shown us what's great on PPTs by putting on logic here. Everything is great, but how far are we going? Is this realistically possible? Now, what I'll take you through next is basically what's happened in this arena so far in humans, like not in other species. In the download part, in about 2016, the White House Brain Initiative came up with something called sniffers. Now, these are biosensors which eliminate every time they detect a neurotransmitter. Why is that a challenge? Because the neurotransmitter, the voltage, the neuron, the electric impulse that it sends, it's extremely small. It's about 1,000 millivolt. And sorry, much lesser than that. I could be wrong on that. But basically, since it's very difficult to detect a neurotransmitter, it's in 2016 when biosensors were found that you illuminate, thereby letting you know what neurons were fired when a certain neurotransmitter is sent. And in 2018, using a neural simulation tool, which is open source actually, scientists came up with an AI algorithm and claimed that they can simulate the brain exactly one to one. So now we know, I mean, it's not just about plugging electrodes into my head and figuring out what's going on. We can actually even simulate that using the algorithm that they have come. Now let's move on to the next process, which is the storage and the process, right? Storage has never been an issue, so I'm not going to touch base on that. We all have probably come through times when we had huge RAMs and disks to extremely small ones now. But the part of interest is for people who are familiar with neural networks here in the AI field, you probably are aware of GPT-3, which was one of the largest neural network in NLP. But about 6 months ago, NVIDIA came up with Megatron Turing Engine 530B, which actually has the capability to process 530 billion parameters. That's not small, that's like huge, 513 billion. 30 billion parameters. So we know that we're heading in the right direction about processing as well. And then let's come to the upload part. I very successfully showed you that in mice, it's possible. It's been done. Adam Cohen and his team have done it. So, and usually, we take that to human species once we have proved it in animal species. But that's just not it, right? It has been proven in multiple experiments around the world that scientists have been successful in triggering a few neurons, certain neurons in the head, in order to make the person feel pain or pleasure. So this is human neurons I'm talking about. So of course, this is a lot different, but at least you know that humans are also capable of receiving external stimuli. So far, everything has been hunky-dory. Everything's been great. On paper, proof, videos, everything's great. But there are challenges in this tech as well. And this is coming from me when I've done the research. The first and the foremost thing is this tech is futuristic. I am not claiming that this is being done now or it will be done next year. Pretty sure this is going to take a long time to happen. But it will eventually happen. For example, restoring after backup. If Roman doesn't get his original circuitry back, it is going to be a problem. But assuming that this tech, we can build it at some point of time ahead, what are the challenges that I see, right? First thing and foremost is you probably will lose your individuality. Because now we're talking about taking my neurons, my headspace, and putting into your headspace and making you behave, actions, think, feel in a certain way. Now, while that may seem okay, what is also something that we need to keep in mind is if that is done, then it's suddenly going to be very easy to control everyone by triggering specific neurons. So there is this risk. The next thing is what I told you in the last 40 minutes, I guess. It's a very brief input into how complex the brain is. And the neural network by itself is complex, the brain is complex. So in addition, they actually come, they're very complex together. So there's a chance that while we're trying to play around with the brain, we may miss out on smaller aspects which are critical, but we haven't captured it. There is the complexity part of it. And then the next thing which I kind of becomes ethical, right? I think a lot of people, and this is in my opinion, I think a lot of people will hesitate from giving their brain because it will show you in raw nudity about what are they thinking, what are they behaving, and what are the deep dark thoughts, and which will obviously make them very vulnerable. So in my opinion, a lot of people may not come forward for this. Maybe a few experiments, yes, but we may not have a scalable business model because you may not have that many contributors. The next thing is, and this is one thing I wanted to flag, is nowhere in the scope of this talk or this service have I spoken about storing it in your brain. So the intention or the plan or the vision is not to make your brain learn about how my brain works, or not classifying things about this is how you're supposed to think. Again, like I said before, I'm pretty sure we all have heard this thing about this is how the society works, or this is how the right things are to be done. So this is in no way training or retraining your brain to understand what the right way is or what the perceived right way is. It's absolutely only about making sure that you get that instantaneous kick about knowing, seeing someone else's head or going through something else that someone else has gone through. And then, of course, my personal favorite, the neuron structure and synaptic connections within humans are different, even though, I can guarantee that Roman's neural structure and my neural structure are different. A lot of factors for it. There's age, there's disease like Alzheimer's, dementia. We have degenerative neurons, injuries where people lose some part of their brain, unfortunately. It's not exactly control C, control V, how we code. So which is why I said in the past, that at the max we can get to is closest to how I feel. So the accuracy of you feeling exactly the same thing that I was feeling will vary from person to person with a good sense of lack of predictability. So I'll not be able to tell you whether you will feel exactly the same thing because your brain is actually your brain. It's got its own individuality. Well, I spoke about the videos, I spoke about what's done so far, about all of the challenges. Does it mean that we should stop this? This event proposal? Should we even stop building this and should we not venture into this? But that's where I choose to differ, right? I think this is a brilliant technology. I think we have to, as in the team and the world has to go towards it. And once we implement it with all the right laws, it's going to be an amazing contribution to healthcare and generally people understanding other species as well. My personal choice is if we actually implement this, is that we'll be able to understand other animal species in a lot better way. So, wrapping up my talk, let me quote a favorite from an author, Peter Drucker, who basically said that PPTs have to work better. Sorry. The best way to predict the future is to create it. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Divya.
Thank you.
I think first of all, kudos to you for the courage that you have to bring in to do something in this space which is so futuristic and so unpredictable, and then also helping us beginners or naives in this field understand it to at least some level. So thanks a lot for that enlightening session. We have a
Thank you, Dhivya.
couple of questions for you. Romil, were you saying something? Did I break
No, no,
in?
I was just, I was so engrossed in the session. I still can't get away from the bungee jump and all the immediate segment after that as to how would my brain be functioning if I were to do such a thing. Yeah, I'm still stuck at that.
Romal, I hope you don't mind. To
That's
carry.
absolutely fine.
I think he was enjoying that, Divya.
Yeah, totally.
Okay, so the first question is, do you see any commercial applications of this beyond the experimental nature?
Oh, great one, Ishan. So, when I was actually preparing for this, I was looking at if industries are interested. There's this niche set of people who actually get the kicks from just knowing what other people are feeling. So there are certain clubs which are not that prominent, but there is, how do I put it, behind the door kind of a scene that people actually pay for this. They actually are investing in this technology going forward so that they can, leverage about the feelings. Commercial applications, one thing that I thought of on a lighter note, Ishan, is KT and ramping up time will not be that much in our industry because now all that I need to do is probably take someone's brain, put it into my head, and code if someone is on leave or vacation. Again, that's on a lighter note. Uh, I think it'll be great for the tourism industry. Now, it can actually blow up. But yeah, and those are the top three things I can think of.
There's one that says
Mhm.
the ease with which you have explained replication, backup, etc. Is that really a possibility? And what would be a typical business case of doing this? Are there any adverse implications of this possibility?
So I got the idea of backup and restore. I'm not sure who the question is from, maybe. So
Uh, yeah,
don't think
I think
I'm
it's anonymous. It
okay.
was
No
pasted
issues.
in the chat. Yeah.
Okay. So sorry, I got the idea of backup and restore basically from disaster recovery of infrastructure systems that we have, that the cloud that we have. But to your question of whether we can do it, um, I don't see a reason why not. I mean, we have crossed technologically, both in healthcare and otherwise, we have crossed a lot of barriers, things that we thought couldn't be done. We have been able to accomplish that. Now, what are the implications of it? We'll only know when Rommel goes through that, and then we figure out after the experiment as to what happens to him.
Yeah.
On a serious note, I didn't get a chance to continue on my research of what are the implications if restore fails. The first thing that comes to my head is, of course, the person will go into a vegetative state. That's the biggest risk that I see. But yeah, I'm pretty sure that's a whole topic by itself about what are the backup and restore fails. So maybe we can take that in the next merge.
Yeah. Sounds like the starter topic for the next one. Dhivya just froze.
Divya, are you there?
Cool. Oh, I think I'm having some internet issues.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I am.
Okay.
So I think we ended this
Cool.
event on a
Any
very
more
high
questions?
note.
No.
I think we don't have any questions. I was just saying that we ended the entire Converge event on a very high note thanks to you because of this session. This was, I mean, we could not have asked for a better end to this event.
Thank you so much, Ravi. Thank you for the opportunity. And personally, thanks to everyone for being here on a Saturday afternoon. And while we could have been sitting and watching Netflix. So